This is Lama Tantrapa. Welcome to our meetup. And today we are going to explore and discuss how to deal with stress. Holiday stress is as real as the Santa Claus and the 5-year-old. So there's always something going on in most people's lives during the holidays. And some people travel, some people visit family, some people wish they would have a family that they would visit, or some people simply experience various types of stress because they're running around trying to shop for holiday gifts, Christmas trees, or what have you. In other words, this is the season where people are supposed to be more relaxed and happy, but often instead of greater relaxation, people experience greater stress. That's something that we want to attend to and address today. So, what is stress? First of all, stress is something that is not just the result of stressors. We experience stress not because stressors exist in our lives or somebody is stressing us out. It's actually how we react to stressors. In other words, there are things happening in the world all the time. Not everything stresses us out. Some things that we experience may serve as stressors. In other words, they are going to push our buttons. How we react to our buttons being pushed, that's the question. In other words, how do we handle the onslaught of information, some of which can be stressful, some of which can be triggering our reactions? And most importantly, how do we learn to stop reacting and start responding to stimuli? We cannot stop experiencing some form of stimulation, some form of information coming at us. There's always something going on. It's just a matter of how well we respond to that information coming at us. And most people don't respond so well. Instead, they react. Now, what's the difference between reaction versus response? Well, it's simple. A reaction, by definition, is action against oncoming forces. So if there are some forces coming at us, whether it's the flow of information or flow of energy or physical projection of energy, if we react to it, let's say if the energy is being projected and I start reacting to it, pushing back or resisting, that usually will be defined as reactivity. And basically, it requires just as much energy to push back, or even more, than the energy coming at us. Simple physics, right? It's not always that we go exactly in the opposite direction to the oncoming energy flow. We can go at an oblique angle, which is more effective. We can also remove ourselves out of harm's way, which is much more effective. That's basically how we learn how to transition from reaction to response. If our buttons get pushed and we try to stand our ground, well, basically standing our ground while our buttons being pushed just makes it easier to push our buttons. We become an easy target. Do we want to be an easy target? Well, in most cases, that's the recipe for stress. So if we don't want to be stressed, we want to become a difficult target. We want to be a moving target. We want to be a target that is moving in some unpredictable ways. How do we move in unpredictable ways? It's not always easy to be unpredictable or spontaneous, but it's something that we can learn. We can learn how to be spontaneous, how to be authentic, which actually gives us the ability to be less predictable. And this unpredictability makes us less likely to be a good target. It makes us a difficult target. Now, when we're talking about being a target, good or bad, that presumes that there is somebody targeting us. And guess what? In most cases, it's not even the case. It's something that is happening and we just simply bump into. And then we feel like a target. We feel like something is being done to us. But in most cases, it isn't really what's happening out there. It's more like what's happening on the inside. It's how we basically run into obstacles in our path without paying attention. So in addition to authenticity and spontaneity, an ability to become more responsive rather than reactive, we also need to develop another quality of consciousness called attentiveness. It's no secret that we live in the time of pandemic of attention deficit disorder. A lot of people experience exactly that, deficit of attention. It goes both ways. They feel like they're not getting enough attention. And so they start acting out, trying to get attention from other people. Why would they do that? Because where attention goes, energy flows. And if you attract attention of other people, you get energy from them. It literally gives you nourishment or it sustains you. You probably know some people that would do whatever it takes or wear whatever it takes or say whatever it takes to grab attention of other people. We call them narcissists, or we call them just simply attention grabbers. Basically, there are often people around us who seek attention. They want to get attention from others because they get energy that way. Essentially, it's being an energy vampire. Most people don't really see it that way, but that's the energetic nature of this kind of dynamic. And we don't want to be energy vampires, do we? Because that actually puts us in the position of dependency of other people. An energy vampire basically is sustained by the energy that they receive from others. On one hand, it seems like they are benefiting. On the other hand, they actually become dependent on the energy resources that come from without. And what's the alternative? To learn how to discover and tap into energy resources within ourselves so that we don't have to seek attention of other people. And when we don't seek attention of other people, how do we get energy? Well, instead of getting it from other people, we learn how to get it from ourselves. And it's actually easier than it may sound. We learn how to give attention to ourselves. We learn how to become really attentive, first learning how to pay attention to ourselves. Now, it may sound almost egocentric or egotistical. When we pay attention to ourselves, often we're afraid that other people will not condone that kind of behavior or that kind of way of attention focus. However, what happens when you pay attention to yourself? Where attention goes, energy flows. You give a lot more energy to yourself. And by doing that, you create a massive circulation of energy in your system. This is, by the way, the secret behind some Qigong practices, such as macrocosmic orbit and others. The energy starts circulating in your system, and the more attention you pay to yourself, the more you provide yourself self-empowerment. You literally experience self-empowerment because you're paying more attention to yourself rather than dispersing your energy wherever you pay attention elsewhere. Now, that's a pretty profound transmission right here. And we're not done yet. In addition to learning how to pay attention to ourselves for the sake of self-empowerment, there is another really profound reason to do that. And that is learning about ourselves. knowing oneself is the holy grail of many schools of thought and spiritual and personal development that are worth their salt. If people know themselves, they're considered wiser. They're considered more enlightened. Well, how do you get to know yourself? How do you become wise? How do you become enlightened? There is only one way to know something. Well, you need to pay attention to it. There is no way to know that which you don't pay attention to. And that's exactly what we're studying. We're learning how to pay attention to ourselves so that we would get to know ourselves better. That's the key to wisdom. Now, when you learn more about yourself, one of the things that you will discover is new energy resources that perhaps were previously even unknown or unavailable to you. How do we discover energy resources within ourselves? Well, we experiment. We literally go through a process of trial and error. One might say, well, that's like reinventing the wheel. Well, that's good, because once you reinvent the wheel, you'll never forget how this wheel works. In other words, you will have the access to these new resources that you discover. It's going to be your own knowledge, have firsthand experience instead of the secondhand knowledge. Somebody telling you that you have some resources. Even if I tell you that you have some amazing energy resources within yourself, if you don't know how to access them and how to put them to good use, that knowledge is no good use to you. So that's exactly why I will be inviting you on a consistent basis every Qigong Coaching Clinic. I'll be inviting you to explore these resources and tap into some of them to see how well they work under certain circumstances. For example, if a person is angry, which probably something that is experienced when people get together for their holiday season gatherings or parties or feasts, that anger doesn't feel great. And other people may feel really uncomfortable in the company of an angry person. Can the energy of anger be used as an energy resource that can be useful under some circumstances? You bet. Of course, that energy can be put to good use. If it's done right, it can be a powerful energy resource that you can rely on under some circumstances. If it's done right, it works for you. Under what circumstances does the energy of anger actually becomes useful? Well, for example, if you go to war and you're fighting for the good cause, your country gets invaded and you're protecting your motherland. Would you get angry about it? It would be justified. Would you be able to put that energy of anger to be a better soldier or better warrior? Yes, of course. Do we have to wait for our country to get invaded to become warriors? I don't need to be a soldier in a war to be a warrior. I was at one point in my life, but I don't have to. I know that I can be a warrior at the time of peace, a peaceful warrior. What does peaceful warrior put his or her energy of anger into so that they would be able to benefit from it? Well, for example, I practice martial arts. I'm not teaching how to be angry, but I know that certain energy that is associated with a state of anger can be useful under martial arts conditions, under conditions of fighting or practicing martial arts. You actually become a more effective martial artist if you know how to tap into that energy on demand when necessary. But you also need to know how to put it aside when it's not necessary. I know some martial artists who learn how to get angry, but they don't know how to stop being angry. So obviously, it's important to learn how to tap into these energy resources and know how to turn them on and turn them off. Is this the only energy resource that we can discover within ourselves? Of course not. For example, there may be an energy of ambition. Now, some people who are hyper ambitious may be not fun to be around of because they're just too self absorbed, and maybe they don't care about other people, and maybe they're so driven that they forget about their friends and family, and they just simply put 100% of their attention into their ambition. Well, there's nothing new. Type A personalities are everywhere. So this is not just black and white. It's proposition. It's different shades of gray, so to speak. It's on the spectrum. And what we do is we learn how to develop some degree of ambitiousness, but do it consciously. If you do it consciously, you can also choose to stop doing it. Just like we were talking about the energy of anger. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. Without any ambition, people usually don't achieve much to show for in their lives. There are, of course, some trust fund babies that don't need to be ambitious. Everything is just delivered to them on a silver platter, so to speak. Or they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. However, those of us who actually were not born with a silver spoon have to do something to make our lives more meaningful. And in order to achieve anything, some ambition is necessary. It's just important to be able to turn it on and turn it off on time so that it's not ruining the rest of your life. I hope it makes sense. Now, how does this relate to dealing with stress? Well, it has a lot to do with dealing with stress because we are learning how to become resourceful. And resourceful people become more resilient. What does it mean to be resourceful? Ability to tap into more resources or access to the resources that you need. What does it mean to be resilient? Well, being resilient means you get back on your feet after being knocked over, or even after some setbacks, you still get back on track. Or if you experience some stress, you don't get pushed over the edge. Don't let the stress to boil over and cause trouble. You literally mitigate it by using those resources that we were just talking about. Now, are those resources the most effective resources? I wouldn't say that the energy of anger or energy of ambition would be the most important or effective resource to deal with stress. As a matter of fact, equanimity would be a state of consciousness that would enable you to experience freedom from undue stress. Equanimity, what is that? Well, it's basically freedom from attachments and aversions. In a nutshell, it's the ability to stay in a more neutral state of consciousness. When you're in that neutral state, you are relaxed. If you shift out of that neutral state, well, you're no longer as relaxed as you could be in a neutral state. You are holding some tension. You are holding some, you are acting with some intensity. Is neutral state completely passive? No, the neutral state is not passive. It's not static. Why? Because you're still alive. And there is no life without movement. A lot of people think, well, if I'm in a neutral state, if I'm in a state of equanimity, I just become really passive and that's boring. Well, it can get boring if you don't have access to any other resources. So we learn how to become resourceful and come back to neutral whenever it's not necessary to use those resources. So in other words, it's kind of like the gear in the manual transmission car. The neutral gear is the one that you go to between the first gear and second gear. If you need to shift from the second to third gear, well, again, you go to neutral. You go to reverse, well, again, you go to neutral first. That's something that most people never learn in their lives, how to develop that ability to shift into a neutral state on demand, at will. That's something that is a profound skill that we can actually develop. And the more we develop this skill, the easier it is for us to handle stressful situations because we literally default to equanimity. The more often you shift into that neutral state, going between one other state and some other alternative state, all the other states are altered states. So basically, instead of shifting from uh, an ambitious state to angry state, for example, or from the state of sadness to the state of joy, you go through neutral. And as you go through neutral, actually give yourself the kudos for being in that neutral state. Just make a mental observation. Oh, I'm in that state of equanimity. Virtually every day, we go through a neutral state many times a day. We just don't pay attention to that because we don't pay enough attention to ourselves. That's why I started our Qigong Coaching Clinic today with this invocation. Please pay attention to yourself because that's the only way to develop self-knowledge. And as you go through that neutral state numerous times a day, you don't have to spend just a few seconds in that state. You can spend maybe half a minute or a whole minute, or maybe even several minutes in that state. When you spend extra few minutes per day in that state of equanimity, you get used to it being in there. It literally becomes a new habit. That's exactly what's going to enable you to default to it. Because basically, if you don't know what to do, if you're being challenged or feel like your buttons get pushed, first revisit that state of equanimity. When you're in that state, you are not aggravated, you are not agitated, you are not frustrated or pissed off. You are simply in a neutral state. It's almost like you relax instead of tensing up when the forces are coming at you. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we want to experience. We want to learn how to relax under pressure. You know what that means? You literally relax, physically relax under pressure. You can actually push into your own body. This is something that we want to do to use our body as a metaphor. If you push into your body and there is some tension, first go ahead and increase the tension. Make this tension conscious. This conscious tension that you experience is something that then you can let go of and become soft and pliable. I'm not the first person to talk about softness being more desirable than stiffness. I think Lao Tzu mentioned that even in Tao Te Ching, saying that the people who are on a deathbed become stiff and the energy doesn't flow through their bodies. The newborns, on the other hand, are soft and pliable and full of life. So, how do we develop that ability to be full of life? That vibrant energy that flows through us gets blocked by tension. Tension is the cause of energy blockages. This is a no-brainer, right? Well, how do we deal with it? We learn how to tense up on purpose. Literally create tension when you choose to do it instead of unconsciously tensing up which then you don't have any recourse to, because you can't stop doing that which you do unconsciously. When you tense up consciously, you feel it, and you know that you're exerting effort, and you become eventually sick and tired of doing it. And when you're tired of doing this, or you just simply decide, okay, I'm done tensing, then you relax. And the relaxation is essentially the practice of non-doing, because there is no signal of relaxation that central nervous system can send to the muscles. There are only more signals of contraction or fewer signals of contraction. So it's exactly the practice of Wu Wei. You're practicing how to send more signals so that you can also learn how to send fewer signals of contraction, or no signals of contraction at all. It's okay to have some muscle tone, by the way. So a little bit of tension is not a bad thing. It's just simply a sign that the muscle is available, it's online. But what we don't want to do is hold chronic tension, which is almost always associated with stress, isn't it? So in a sense, mind-body connection, or realignment as they call it, is what we're learning. How to make it so that we would become relaxed under pressure physically, which would lead to mental relaxation and the ability to not be overly stressed. And that's something that few people learn in their lifetimes. I would love to share this knowledge with you, and I already shared a fair amount of it today, and continue doing that. So we will continue exploring these and other principles that are that our art consists of. What art am I talking about? I'm talking about the art of being in a flow. We call it Qidao. Qidao is the art of feeling the flow of energy and learning how to be in the flow of it. Again, that's the holy grail of Qigong. Anyone who studies Qigong or any type of energy arts would benefit from it. Essentially, that's the primary objective of our art, to learn how to feel the flow of energy, the flow of things in the universe, the Tao, and learn how to be one with it. What we do is we learn how to develop this ability step by step, and learning how to release stress or become less affected by it is a wonderful first step. So I hope that this helped you, and you take away some nuggets from this particular discussion. If you have any questions or have any examples of when it was challenging for you to release stress, feel free to unmute yourself, turn the camera on. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I saved a fair amount of time for Q&A today. How do you like my cup? So, I don't hear any questions coming my way. Do you not experience stress? Something brought you here. You must have been curious about something that we explore. Obviously, different Qigong coaching clinics are dedicated to different subjects, but this month is the subject of working with stress. If you have any questions about that, or any questions about resilience, or about learning how to become more resourceful, feel free to turn a camera on and a mic and speak up. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Well, if you don't have any questions, then I'm going to wish you a wonderful holiday season. Happy New Year, Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, as they say. And I wish you a fantastic completion of this year. We will be getting together next year on the third Saturday of January. I believe it will be January, January 20th. So between now and then, have a wonderful time. Namaste.